everyone that's present here. I hope you had a good lunch. I would request everyone or anyone that's still standing to settle down as we're looking to start the session. The session, which is Thematic Track 2, is Developing Infrastructure for Functional Carbon Markets, Linking the Registries for a Global Carbon Market. The session will explore the infrastructure necessary for linked carbon markets, focusing on the interoperability of national and regional carbon registries. It will cover the technical, regulatory, and governance challenges involved in registry integration. Chairing and moderating this session is Mr. Saurabh Diddi, Director, Bureau of Energy Efficiency. I would like to welcome him to the stage. Along with Saurabh sir, we also have our esteemed panelists. First, we have Ms. Gemma Torres Vives, Climate Change Specialist, World Bank. I would like to welcome you to the stage, please. And a round of applause for our esteemed panelists. We then have Mr. Ashish Chaturvedi, Head Action for Climate and Environment, UNDP India. We have Mr. Langa Dorji, Senior Environment Officer, Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources, Bhutan. We have Mr. Yuvraj Dinesh Babu, Executive Director, Infrablocks Capital, Singapore. A round of applause, please. And finally, we have Mr. Jack Chong, Director for APAC Environment Solutions, S&P Global.
Thank you and welcome to this thematic track 2, developing infrastructure to functional carbon markets, linking the registries for a global carbon markets. To set the context first, I would like to invite Mr. Tushar Saxena, who will actually give a brief overview of our digital infrastructure, how it is actually being developed for the Indian carbon market. Tushar. And you have only 4 to 5 minutes. Presentation. दीक्षा को दे दी थी. So in the meantime, I'll just introduce all the panelists that the time which we are going to get this presentation. We have Gemma Torres. Gemma leads capacity building, technical assistance, and prototype initiatives on carbon market digital infrastructure at the World Bank. Her portfolio is development and deployment of digital MRV, National Carbon Offset Registry trading platform, which is actually essential for our today's all that work. We also have Mr. Ashish Chaturvedi, who is the head of the Environment, Energy, and Resilience at UNDP India. Ashish has been working on the topics of environment, climate change, circular economy in India for 17 years. He has a wide experience in community-based adaptation, waste management, sustainable consumption, and environmental policy. We also have Mr. Langa Dorji. Am I pronouncing correctly? Okay. Mr. Langa is Deputy Chief Environmental Officer and works under the Department of Environment and Climate Change, Ministry of Energy, Royal Government of Bhutan. So he came right from Bhutan, which is a very beautiful country. He has more than 15 years of working experience in the area of environment and climate change. Also, we have Mr. Yuvraj Dinesh Babu. He is currently Executive Director at Infrablocks Capital, Singapore. He came from Singapore for our program. Thank you. Until recently, he was leading the Climate Data Action Trust, which was also actually supported in development of our carbon market. He based out of Singapore, and earlier he worked with ENY, World Bank, and many of other organizations. Also, we have Mr. Jack Chong. Jack Chong is Asia Pacific Director for Environmental Solution with S&P Global. He where his team has actually more than 35 environmental registries they have built. In his role, he manages the relationship with clients with Asia Pacific for registry infrastructure and services to track and connect disparate carbon market ecosystems. So welcome to all the panelists. Uh, as we have now presentation ready, so we'll have first presentation on the registry infrastructure. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. So this presentation is on the digital infrastructure that we are developing to operationalize the Indian carbon market. So basically, Bureau has the mandate to develop the infrastructure for the carbon market, which involves the portal on which both the mechanism will be operationalized, and one is the registry, that is the ICM registry. So Bureau has the mandate to develop and maintain the IT platform required for ICM. So the platform consists of two parts. One is the ICM portal and other is the ICM registry. So we have two components. One is ICM portal and one is ICM registry. On the ICM portal, we have mechanism established for the compliance mechanism on which the data filing will be done by the all obligated entities, and once verified and scrutinized by the administrator, then the certificates will be issued to the obligated entity over the portal. And once the certificates are issued, then those certificates will be credited to the ICM registry. In the similar fashion, we have offset mechanism. For the offset mechanism, we have the whole project cycle that the project PDD will be submitted on the portal, then the validation process will take place, then registration will take place, and thereafter the verification, the issuance process will take place, and this all thing will happen on the ICM portal itself. Once the certificates are issued on the ICM portal, then the certificates will be credited to the ICM registry, where each certificate will have a unique ID and the certificate will be maintained on the blockchain technology. And in the going forward, we will also add Article 6 component on this ICM portal itself. So it will cater all the three things, that is the compliance mechanism, offset mechanism, and cooperative operations. So as we can see there, the steps that project proposal will come, then project registration will happen, then validation, then verification. So all the steps where the authorization is required, that will go through the NetIPA. So they have their dedicated authorization login on the portal itself, and the process will take place in similar fashion as we are doing for the offset mechanism. So the other component is that our registry, which is the ICM registry, has been defined as a meta registry for India. So all the international linkages will be established through our registry. For that, the portal will file the data on the ICM registry, and thereafter the linkages will be done with the international registry, mechanism registry, or any other registry. So all the data will be maintained through the DLT, that is the distributed ledger technology, and the registry will maintain and track all the data from the point of issuance till the point of expiry or retirement of the certificate. So coming to the portal side, so we are developing this portal. So this is the homepage of the portal where you will get the details about the ICM, about the act, rules, regulations, and the publication. So we already have the publication for compliance mechanism and for accredited carbon verification agencies. In the future, all the other publications like for procedure for offset mechanism will also be in the publication tab. And as you can see, there is an offset project. So all the projects which will submit the PDD will directly go for the stakeholder consultation, and they will be reflected here. And the public can give the comment on the submitted PDD, and it will directly go to the entity who has submitted the PDD so that they can address those comments. ACVA is the accredited carbon verifiers. So the carbon verifiers can play the role in both offset and compliance mechanism. So we have a provision to register as a ACV entity on the portal itself that I will show in the next slides. And the other tab is for the Article 6. So that we will be developing in the coming months, where that all the filing and the process will take place through this portal itself for Article 6.2. So as of now, there are 5 entities which can register on the portal. First is the obligated entity. Obligated entity are the entities which have been given target under the compliance mechanism. Then the other is the non-obligated entity, project developers, who will be submitted the project for getting the certificate issued under the offset mechanism. The third one is the non-obligated purchaser. These are those category of non-obligated entity who wants to purchase the certificate either from compliance or from offset market. The other one is the ACVA. So ACVA is the agency who will have a dedicated login, who will get the request from the respective entity either for validation or verification, and they will submit all the details through this digital platform. The fifth one is an interesting one, that is the ICM professional. So we have defined a new category as an ICM professional, where an individual can register as a stakeholder who will be working in the ICM in some capacity in the ICM mechanism. Like he can be the part of the ACV agency. So every ICM professional will be given a unique ID, and when the ACVA will register as a agency or for empanelment, they need to tag those ICM professional in their portal itself. So they need not to submit every file independently. All those individuals will be registered on the portal itself, and they have to maintain their own profile on the ICM portal. So as we can see, this is for the ICM professional. So it will cover. Sir, so it will cover all the details which is required for the each ICM professional, like if he's under the compliance, then what is the AEA number, what is the CEA number, and other work experience, educational qualifications, and the required documents which need to be uploaded to get it verified for the different capacity which is being for which they have applied on the for the ACVA. So as you can see in this slide, there is the organization association status also. So once as an individual I am registered with an ACVA, so I will have all the details from which time to what time I was associated with which ACVA, if I have moved to another ACVA, and which capacity also. So like I am a full-time team lead or a sector expert. So sector expert can be a part-time also, depending upon he might be engaged with two ACVA agency. So it will bring more transparency and credibility at the root level that each ICM professional will be engaged and have an ownership in the validation and verification process. So now coming to the ACVA part. So as you can see, ACVA need to register as a entity and they will get a login. Then they need to accredit themselves under the ICM, for which we have different options that need to be submitted. First is the general detail, then they need to select the mechanism for which they are opting for. Then they can select the sectors. Then they need to select the team members. So for the team members, they can directly select the ICM professional through their IDs, and all the data will be reflected directly. And they need to also get a consent from the individual whose name they are using for getting the accreditation. So now I'm showing for the compliance mechanism. So for the compliance mechanism, we have 4 tabs where the target will reflect the trajectory period and the target for every compliance year. And this is the carbon credit issuance cycle. So they need to submit action plan, E2 form, performance assessment, verification, and based on the verification, issuance will be done on the same platform. This slide shows that how the trading will happen in the compliance part. So in that, all the trading platforms which are engaged for the ICM trading will be reflected here. And once the certificates are issued, they will be reflected as an opening balance. And as a passbook, it will be maintained whether the certificates are purchased or sold on any exchange, and it will reflect the closing balance for the respective trading session. This one is for the offset mechanism. So for the offset mechanism, we have a page where there is a project list for the overall tracking the project. So here you can trace the project, what is the status of the project, whether it is listed, accepted, or at the validation state, or registered, verified, and issued. Now, in this, this is the second part of this where he can submit the PDD for the stakeholder consultation. So we try to automate as much as we can do so that there is a minimal intervention of the person which might result in a delay. So like once the PDD is submitted, then it will directly go for the stakeholder consultation and it will generate the report after the timeline is over for the stakeholder consultation. It will directly go to the entity who has submitted the PDD. The other one is the credit wallet, which we are exploring for the offset mechanism, where where the entity who are the seller and buyer can give the authorization and send the request for the transaction of the certificate, and the registry will settle the trade once it gets the acknowledgement from both the parties that they have settled the financial implication of the trade outside the system, and then registry will update their transaction in the database. The other part is the registry data model. So it covers the organization data, project data. So we have mapped our data model as per the CAT trust. So we mapped all the data points and we divided into 8 segments. That is what is the current state, origin state, project rating, CCT trading, issuance detail, project detail, and we are also addressing the Article 6 detail required for the project, and then the transfer state. So we have different data points, which I think it is difficult to show from this, but this is the last slide.
Thank you, Tushar. I know you have taken much more time what was anticipated, but it was important. Thank you. So, as you have seen in the earlier session, when Honorable Minister actually came and he also emphasized that it should be fraud-proof registry and it should be very transparent and infrastructure should be robust. Also, he emphasized on the blockchain technology should be adopted and all those things. So this session is actually how we can actually have an infrastructure, not only in India, but because all these technologies will have an interplay with each other. For example, as Tushar also showed that our ICM portal will be in linkage with international registries and also other registries. So there has to have an interplay, and also a lot of security measures are required because we know that these days how many attacks happen on such portals. So from that perspective, if all of you can give introductory remarks for 2 to 3 minutes, and then we'll have a round of questions. So we'll start with Gemma.
Thank you, Didi, sir, for the introduction, and thank you to the Government of India and the Ministry of Power for inviting to this panel. Indeed, the World Bank is providing capacity building to countries to leverage climate finance and carbon markets, specifically also on carbon markets infrastructure. And we support countries at national level to build robust MRV systems, registries, and trading platforms as they are key building blocks to enable the scale-up of carbon markets, and specifically registries. Registries are a key digital component that enables recording, tracking, and reporting data. As you could see in Tushar's presentation, is your accounting tool to do robust accounting on your carbon credits, as well as making sure that they are not double counted, and we can keep the integrity in carbon markets and trust. And not only that, but if you look at the international requirements of Paris Agreement, countries and parties are required under Article 6 to have access to a carbon registry to comply with the reporting and tracking requirements. So this is a very important component as well by the Paris Agreement. So in this regard, we are supporting countries on technical capacity and needs agreement, so needs assessment. So if a country comes to us and says, we want to set up a registry, how do we do it? And we provide, you have different available options. You have existing registry services, and I think SMP, Jack will tell us more about it. You can build your registry from scratch, like the India example and other examples. And then we also provide innovation and prototyping services, we do proof of concept for minimum viable products. So for instance, we developed an off-the-shelf registry leveraging blockchain technology to ensure it's a tamper-proof and immutable registry for accounting. We also developed the Climate Action Data Trust together with AIDA and the government of Singapore, where all the registries connect together and enhance interoperability. So these are around innovation and prototyping work. And last but not least, we also support countries on training and capacity building. So we do provide comprehensive trainings to countries through a modular components on tracking, mapping data, making sure that the data taxonomies are harmonized, and also the transaction side. So this is at the national level, how we support countries on carbon market infrastructure, specifically on registries. And last but not least, on the global side, we are working with many stakeholders in a working group, which maybe I'm going to explain more a bit later, to develop key standards and guidelines on 3 key areas for strengthening infrastructure. The first one is ecosystem governance. So there's a lot of overlapping of roles and responsibilities across the ecosystem, and that needs to be clarified, and technical definitions. Secondly, we work around IT security and transaction integrity. As Sir Didi was saying, we need to establish anti-money laundering safeguards, KYC, know your client policies to make sure that there's no illicit funds through the transactions of carbon credits. And last but not least, we need to make data and systems interoperable. So if you look at the full life cycle of a carbon credit, we have a lot of different data formats, and we need to make them talking to each other. So this is, in a nutshell, what we do at the World Bank in terms of national and global level to support countries. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Gemma. Mr. Ashish Chaturvedi, what exactly UNDP is doing in that aspect?
Thanks very much, and of course, delighted to be here, and thanks BE to invite us. I'll pick up from where Gemma actually left. So what UNDP is doing globally is we actually are a secretariat, we hold the secretariat of the Digital Public Goods Alliance. And one of the applications of the Digital Public Goods Alliance is essentially to start thinking about how do you set up these interoperable systems? How do you set up all of these? Because a bunch of countries are doing precisely what was just presented in their own national context. Every country is developing its market. Every country is trying to work on its registries. What kind of standards do these registries and markets operate on? Do they actually speak to each other? Are they set up initially to apply certain standards which allow them to speak to each other? And this is something that sort of Gemma kind of hinted at it, but there is a Digital for Climate working group which has been set up, which includes UNDP is involved in it, World Bank's involved in it, EBRD is involved in it, and there are other actors involved as well. And there we're precisely coordinating our own efforts so that we're not duplicating some of these exercises at the global level, at the international level. And this basically means that some of the work that is happening at the country level in terms of registry development, in terms of market development, in terms of methodological sort of innovations, do not have to sort of reinvent the wheel. They can actually learn from global sort of mechanisms and processes. And I'll give you a couple of examples when I have more time. But one of the things that sort of course, interoperability allows is, well, sort of greater transparency, sort of greater understanding of what the market actually does and how it can deliver. But it also, in some cases, well, is a critical lever for enhancing the liquidity in the market as well. So once you're visible, once you sort of, when the actors in the sort of in the ecosystem are aware of what the mechanisms and procedures are, and there's greater data sharing, it also allows for greater participation because there have been many sort of instances where you would have seen that innovations like these have not been able to get the kind of interest from the market players themselves. And therefore, liquidity was a big challenge in a lot of these markets to begin with. So I think these are the kind of innovations, and when I get my next round, I'll give you 3 examples of how UNDP is supporting different countries.
Thank you. And now my next speaker is Mr. Langa Dorji from Bhutan. And what exactly Bhutan is doing, if you can give in your introductory remarks.
Very good afternoon to all the panelists and the audience out here. I would like to thank the organizer for inviting us and engaging with us in this meeting. And then from the Bhutan's perspective, I think the carbon market is seen as a mechanism to diversify our economy, as well as to maintain their carbon neutral commitment from the Bhutan's perspective. And then Bhutan is very proud to be the carbon negative country, and then building a carbon registry is our key priority in the 13th five-year plan. And then having recognized this, we have also a very political support from our country. And then these registries are critical and ensuring the transparency and traceability. And as a result, with the support from World Bank, Bhutan, we have developed our own national registry, and it's in operational. And then Bhutan is also very proud to say that we are the first country to connect to CATRUS in this registry. And then Bhutan look forward to engaging with all of you. And then as a part of preparatory, Bhutan has been engaging and then doing a lot of preparation on to have this functional registry. So we, in terms of Bhutan, we have worked on to develop and then approved our carbon market rules 2023. Then we also worked on carbon policy, market policy 2025, and then climate fund. And then also we are also approved and then decided on positive list so that the project developer can take part in it. And lastly, not the least, but we are also signing an agreement with a bilateral agreement with the government of Singapore this coming 28th February. So hope to engage with all of you, and then thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Langa Dorji. Now my next speaker is Mr. Yuvraj Dinesh Babu. If you can highlight on importance of registry and especially what you did in the earlier avatar.
Thank you so much. Saurabh, thanks to B for inviting me. I'm so glad to be here. So as Saurabh said, prior to the current position at Infrablocks, I was leading the Climate Action Data Trust. And this was the initiative, as Gemma said, about World Bank, Government of Singapore, and AITA, where the registry incompatibility was addressed by harmonizing the data across all the standards, especially in the voluntary market, and also targeting the national governments as well. So as the previous panelist said, Bhutan was the first country to connect with the Climate Action Data Trust. So the idea was to provide the data in a harmonized fashion to all of us in a more transparent manner, at the same time respecting the privacy of certain type of data. And therefore, CATRUS was an initiative by itself, the first of its kind, again based on blockchain technology, and basis which right now CATRUS has more than 95% of the credits issued in the market being hosted there, where you and me can go and collect all the information in a very structured format. And there are many uses for that, but that is limited time right now to mention about the harmonization benefits. But coming to the technology aspect of it, after that, I moved on to Infrablocks Capital, and right now we are developing an end-to-end digital solution where you also can develop your project design document online, where the data becomes very easily digestible from the day one, and then we are integrating with the digital MRV platform, and we already have a digital blockchain transaction platform. So it's an end-to-end solution which Infrablocks Capital offers. And other than that, we are also working on a private equity fund for investing in Article 6 and voluntary carbon market projects. So that's a quick background, and of course, we'll discuss more. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuvrajji. Now, my next speaker is Mr. Jack Chong, and what exactly you are doing in S&P Global, if you can highlight on that.
All right. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, BV, for inviting S&P for this panel. So I'm from S&P Global, so you probably know us as a benchmark pricing ratings company. Please don't come look for me. I'm not too happy with your ratings or S&P 500 shares, different department. So I'm from the team that helps to build carbon registries, right? We've been doing this for the last 15 years. We are building for Singapore, for Canada. We were recently awarded the Kenya Rate Plus registry as well. 35 registries altogether. So first of all, I'd like to thank the panelists for explaining what a registry does. To the point, I have nothing much to share what registry do. But I will say this, right? We've been doing this 15 years, but the last 3 years became really important. And why is it so, right? Before 2021, when I was kind of new in the market, the whole registry system was, everything was operating in silos, right? You have international standards operating on its own, you have compliance markets. Nobody was really talking about interoperability. That whole Paris Articles Agreement, Article 6, Paris Agreement came in 2021, and then now you have voluntary credits that can possibly use for compliance markets. Certain compliance credit can be also used for voluntary. Certain voluntary credit can potentially use for compliance if they meet certain requirements. It's just like saying this, right? You have a bank account, you accept Indian rupees. Today, this bank account may accept USD. Tomorrow, it may accept euros. But what's more complicated is that certain bank accounts say, okay, I can accept USD, but only on this serial numbers. So can you imagine how complicated this has become, this registry business? I think that's where this panel is really to address how do you have a functioning market where the whole market becomes interoperable? Because without that interoperability, I think the market cannot function because it's just too complex. And later I'll share a little bit of some of the learnings we have gone through in the last few years.
Thank you, Mr. Jack. So now we'll have a round of questions. And my first question is to Ms. Gemma. Gemma is from World Bank, and World Bank is actually deeply involved in climate finance access and all. So in this context of carbon markets, how the World Bank is supporting countries with carbon asset registries? For example, you are doing something with us as well, like approaches, capacity building, or some other activities like registry development, if you can highlight on all those aspects.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Didi, sir. So as I was mentioning before briefly, the registry system is one of the key building blocks. And many countries come to us and says, what are the minimum requirements of this registry? And the first thing that we do is a needs assessment. And we say, what do you want? Do you want to have the tracking and the reporting, or do you want the registry to also enable transactions? And so we provide different options. You can either develop by yourself, like the full registry that has tracking, reporting, and transaction, like the one that Tushar was presenting. Secondly, you can get a service provider like SMP and not have to take the full upfront cost of developing the full registry. And last but not least, you can wait for the international registry developed by UNFCCC to be ready, and you can take it upfront. So this is the first step that we take with countries. The second one is once you have decided on which option to go, we provide innovation and prototyping, and essentially there is which part of the registry you want to strengthen, which part of the registry you want to develop further. And together with BE, we are focusing on a proof of concept of the transaction layer of the registry. So the tracking and the reporting is pretty straightforward. We said, what are the key data parameters that we need to have as a registry? And it's around 70 to 80 data fields minimum that you need to have to be compliant with the Paris Agreement. And these data parameters are, what is the project name? What is the sector? What is the validation body? What is the verification body? And then on the unit side is, what is the unit count? What is the vintage? Methodology. So it's very basic data parameters for reporting and tracking. But now, if you want to add transaction functionality in your registry, that becomes a bit more complicated. And the reason why it becomes more complicated is because, as you know, in the financial markets, we have key safeguards like KYC, know your client. So you verify who is actually transacting. You also have AML, anti-money laundering, so you prevent that illicit funds flow in the transactions. And you have anti-bribery and corruption standards, so you make sure that there's no compromised validation of carbon credits. So all these standards need to be fully embedded in a transaction functionality if you're building your registry, which is what BE is working on. But other countries may say, you know, this is too complex for us. We don't have the capacity. We want a full service on this. So then they can go to service providers in the market and connect through an API their own database and outsource the transaction services. So this would be on the prototyping innovation side. And we also, as they were mentioned, other colleagues, on interoperability, what this word means, no? And this word essentially means the registry from country A and the registry from country B need to talk to each other. Because you will be transacting, you will be transferring credits. If you have different data models, that's going to be quite difficult. And it's going to be quite difficult to connect and to do the smooth transaction. So how do you make your registry interoperable? The first step is, let's look at our data model. And Tushar was mentioning in the presentation that they have a full-fledged data model that they actually developed together with the Climate Action Data Trust. And so that's for interoperability, another important aspect that we looked at. And finally, we do a lot of trainings and capacity building to countries. We've been training many countries, including Bhutan, India, Vietnam, soon Belize, also Pakistan, many countries that are looking forward to have a hands-on immersive experience. And how do we provide a training? It's not only through giving a presentation, but we developed a registry tool that it simulates exactly what the registry is about. And we provide this, it's a gamified experience that lasts from 1 month to 3 months. You can log into the platform and you upload the data on a project, you upload the data on the carbon credit, you can create the issuance, you can transfer your credits to another stakeholder. And countries, by having this immersive hands-on experience, have learned a lot through, okay, this is how it works, this is what a registry is, and this is how I should build it. And we use this kind of training tools for capacity building and also South-South knowledge exchanges. So we learn as well from countries that have already really mature registries out there. So this would be in a nutshell the key activities that the bank we do in supporting countries on carbon asset registries.
Thank you, Gemma. So our next speaker, Mr. Ashish Chaturvedi, you know, data security and market transparency is actually the need of the hour. How you, these innovative digital solutions, especially related with carbon market, you foresee that they are going to help in mitigating these issues related with data security and transparency?
Thanks, Saurabh. I'll take a step back and sort of kind of talk about the UNDP entry point into these conversations. So UNDP is working with more than 60 countries around the world on their national MRV systems. Now, of course, the national MRV systems also have to speak to how the other components around market development are actually developed over a period of time. So even in India, for instance, UNDP has been working very closely with the Ministry of Environment on the national communication, the biennial update reports, and the first biennial transparency report, which is going to be submitted in the next few sort of weeks or months. The idea there is to kind of support countries develop a certain structure, a digital structure. So in a few countries in Africa, Kenya being one of them, but also in small island developing nations, we are saying take a step forward in digitalizing the entire national MRV system using the digital public good principles to sort of make sure that you're also making, sort of ensuring the interoperability and communication between the component systems where the market, the carbon market and the digital registry for the market would also be a component of the national MRV system. At least we'll have to speak to that. Similarly, we have actually developed 2 other instruments. One, we've actually developed a standard registry, a digital registry, which can actually be applied by any country. So this is a tool which is, again, based on digital public good principles, using some of the sort of standards, which sort of Gemma has mentioned about the interoperability. This is one of the key criteria, the security protocols. Who's allowed to access the kind of user authorization processes, which in itself are very critical to make sure that the entire legal and the sort of, technical architecture supports the security protocols that you want to establish. So we've actually developed an entire protocol and a sort of a ready-to-use digital registry, which is now being utilized by a few small island developing nations, including Vanuatu. And the third element that we've developed is something called a carbon cooperation platform, which is setting up the 6.2, how do you start trading ITMOs? And 6.2 is sort of one of the mechanisms under the Paris Agreement. And one basically needs to develop an entire sort of national architecture, which again speaks to the global sort of processes under the sort of market mechanisms of the Paris Agreement. So these 3 examples, the first one being national MRV systems, and let me sort of share some more news. As far as India is concerned, we're also working in a national inventory management system, which has been long planned, but hasn't been sort of rolled out yet. So jointly with the Ministry of Environment, the National Communication Cell of the Ministry of Environment, we are working on a national inventory management system, which is again a digital sort of platform, which will work on developing the national, well, sort of the GHG inventory for the entire country. So the idea is that thus far we've been sort of basically developing the capacities of the ecosystem, lots of institutions within the country who are sort of being trained to develop, well, also report on the biennial transparency report mechanisms, the 95 common reporting templates. So this is actually quite a complex exercise. So how does one actually digitize that process itself so that then it's also ready to communicate to the other sort of work which is happening in the market areas? So the first one being national MRV systems, the second one being digital standardized registries, and the third one being a platform for 6.2 trading.
Very aptly said, 3 ideas and especially framework, which is very good. And yeah, Article 6.2 connect with with the country's registry is essential. And with that note, I would move on to Mr. Langa Dorji, that Bhutan is actually has developed a national registry with support of, I think, World Bank. In, but what are the barriers what you have faced while development of that registry, and especially from the point of view that when this registry is having a linkage with the international registries. So what are the barriers or challenges what you have faced, and you can suggest any ideas which India can also incorporate while development?
Thank you, Chair. I think when you talk about these barriers, I think let me take it in this way that Bhutan has a very limited knowledge. It's also very new, and then this, when it comes to this interoperability, it has been yet to be tested in our context. And the registry development is and then as well as the capacity is one of the challenge that we have. And with the help of World Bank, we're trying to build in-house capacity. And then another thing is that I think financial constraint could be the one challenges. Well, establishing for the initial purpose, we have done it with the help of World Bank. And perhaps if you need to integrate into the more sophisticated in the near future, then perhaps the financial may come into the issue at a later stage. And then also, for example, in our case, Bhutan, we have adopted a government-owned agency with the technical arm, we call it Duke Holding Investment, where they are technical capable, built up, and then our own technical people will take up all these issues related to registry at the later end of the stage. And then some, I think, could in order to ensure this, our Bhutan also trying to work on establishing end-to-end carbon market infrastructures. So that's all, I think.
Thank you. Now, my next question is to Mr. Yuvraj Dinesh Babu. As infra blocks is actually a blockchain-based infrastructure, but we have legacy carbon credits as well in the market, and now this new blockchain-based solutions are there. So, what are the constraints we can see with this scenario that we are moving in? So how infra blocks can help, or what exactly we can see as a problematic areas from that perspective, from the legal, from the old traditional certificates point of view?
Great question. Thanks, Saurabh. So fundamentally, what we initially saw was the data inconsistency, and therefore data harmonization was the first effort. But thanks to Cat Trust, and since I was there, I took the benefit of that. Thanks to Gemma as well, that we immediately connected with Cat Trust for the kind of data harmonization. So that is the first step, and I would recommend each one of you also to become a kind of a member of Cat Trust and try to take the benefit of harmonization. So that was the first one, that when we provide our transaction services to the clients for the legacy carbon credits, the first thing was to get the data harmonized, and therefore Cat Trust became the solution for us. Even today, as we move forward also, it will remain, as it is going to connect more registries, national and voluntary. The second part was, as I mentioned to you before, in terms of blockchain ensures the transparency, but we have to respect the privacy as well. So end of the day, the project developer kind of owns the data, generates the data, and therefore has to benefit from the data, not the rest of the world straight away. So therefore, we have to understand how the data flows, and we have several discussions with the project developers who are not mostly aware of how that data is being used by the rest of the world. And therefore, that was a major challenge we face even today as we speak, in terms of how to understand the privacy of data, how to respect that, but at the same time, help them make aware about the blockchain benefits so that they can seamlessly join. Because most of you in the room, you may know what is blockchain, but you may not know how it works. So please don't worry, that you need not know how it works. But what you should know is to keep aware of the benefits of that, because for the last decade or more than 2 decades, you have been using digital online banking. This is simple as that. So don't get into the basics of what is blockchain, how the programming runs, and what is the power consumption, and what's all that stuff. But worry more about how your data is being used, and how you're benefiting out of that, and how else others are benefiting from your data. I think that is the most kind of a tough challenge when we face with the corporates when we host our carbon credits on the registry, on the platform. The last one is about how the whole process could be digitalized from day one. As I mentioned to you, the project design document, again, most of you in this room know the traditional engagement of consultancy, who will normally take 3 to 6 months. I have taken even 1 year to write a project design document 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But today you can do that within maybe 2 weeks or maximum 1 month, provided you have all the data. So the next challenge becomes the veracity of the data, the simplicity of the data, the authenticity of the data. And therefore, that is another major challenge we face as we speak. And we are trying to break it down in such a way that the digitalization of the data from the day one on the project design document becomes an easy factor for the trading or for the monitoring, reporting, and verification as well. That's another challenge. And as Saurabh asked, in terms of the legal issues, again, country like India, we know the blockchain is recognized, but it is not fully implemented across the government or in the private sector, and it is not basically considered as a technology for improving the efficiency or protecting your data. When you say blockchain, most of you in this room will only remember Bitcoin. So blockchain is not Bitcoin. We all know that. But that is how it is being correlated by the public. And therefore, we have to kind of decipher the meaning of blockchain and try to understand how the financing community, the regulation is going to recognize it, especially in the carbon markets. When the government said today morning that the blockchain is going to be the technology for their registry, I was the most happiest person in the world. But having said that, do you all understand how the government is going to implement it? So therefore, the awareness becomes a key, and that's where we face in each and every country when you move forward with them. The regulatory environment is not that friendly to the blockchain technology, because they always correlate it to the Bitcoin or any other coin in the world. So that part of the legal issues still remain, and awareness and kind of technical assistance towards addressing that part of the story becomes extremely important. Then becomes the trading part of it, where the trading can happen on blockchain or on the traditional exchanges. Again, it is an open question today. We don't have too many success stories on the blockchain exchanges. But having said that, be prepared. And that will definitely help you to understand how you can tokenize your carbon credits, how you can retail your carbon credits to optimize. I'm not saying maximize, to optimize your returns on the carbon credits. And these are the challenges which we face right now, which as such I'm working on the digital end-to-end platform, where we are dissecting this in silos, because sometimes it is good to work in silos to give a seamless digital end-to-end experience to the clients. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuvrajji. So my next question is to Mr. Jack. How does your platform ensure the secure and transparent tracking of the carbon credits, and especially to for the double counting to actually avoid issues of double counting or fraudulent things. So how this tracking, transparently tracking is happening on your platform?
Right. Thanks for the question. So allow me to kind of, I was talking about the last 3 years. There's so much. The market has evolved so quickly. New requirements, new features. Thanks for the question about double counting. So I think perhaps, in the essence of time, I'll just highlight a few areas. We've seen how the market has requested a lot and some of the changes, in the last few years. I think the first one that's more important is serial numbers, serialization of credits. In the past, serial numbers can be very simple, SA001, 002. I think today, with number of programs in the market, we're talking about 60 to 70 different programs out in the market. That's just a voluntary. There's now the 6.4, there's national carbon markets, there's a lot of programs out in the market. That serialization of credits, the number, it becomes so important, right? You need to have sufficient sophistication in every credit. You can't just keep a very simple number because the risk of double counting becomes extremely high, right? The next thing I want to talk about is to reiterate the point of KYC, right? Due diligence. This is something that's very interesting because the last few years, there's been so much interest in this market. Today, you and I, every one of us can be a buyer of carbon credit, right? We can buy credits to offset. So we are talking about a very broad-based market, and that also means this market invites a lot, quote unquote, people with questionable background, right? The due diligence that you talk about, anti-money laundering checks, world checks, all these are so important because I think let's agree on this, right? The last thing we want is another media criticism of this market, right? We've seen the last 2 years, headlines of, RED Plus projects are fraud, certain project methodologies are fraud, and this and that. The last thing we want are, now carbon credits can be used as a money laundering tool. We don't want that, right? We don't want to shake the confidence of the investors and the buyers, etc., right? So KYC due diligence is so important. The next one is this idea of user management, right? We've seen a lot of registries, right? They create users accounts. You have a administration, you have a one all user account who can do everything in a registry. What we learned the last few years is that this cannot just work. I'll give you an example, right? I used to be from an energy major, right? I trade carbon credits. Back then, I'm not allowed access to the registry. Or I can see what credits I have in my registry, but I'm not allowed to trade. I'm not allowed to transfer and retire. And there's a very good reason for it. Because if I'm a trader, right, if I access to the registry, I can do, quote unquote, under table deals with people in the market, sell the credits and transfer the credits to them, right? And what I've seen a lot of registries today, they don't have that planned user management. I think this is really important. You need to segregate controls. And without this segregation, that's where all the potential fraud will come in, all right? Let's be honest, this market, as I mentioned, is back to the point of becomes a very broad-based market, right? Everybody can now trade carbon credits, you and I, man on the street. So there needs to be a user of segregation in a registry. Right. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what sort of panels I've been sharing here about this idea of interoperability, right? Data harmonization, which I totally agree, right? You mentioned that registries are not incompatible. Yes, they are not compatible in this sense, right? So just to kind of share a little initiative that S&P is doing called Meta Registry. It's quite similar to what ICM is doing. Meta Registry is to connect to different registries. Right, beyond that, connectivity and data harmonization, one of the things we identified is, with all this data, right, one of the things we were trying to do is to look for, we want to uphold the integrity of projects. One of the things we're looking at is project overlaps. Are there any project overlaps? If I register a project on this program, is this same project also registered on another program or another compliance market? Because if there is, then it becomes a problem. It's a double counting problem, right? We definitely don't want that. Right. For certain type of projects like forestry, I think it's easy because it's really, we talk about KML files, boundaries, renewable projects are quite easy because it's one location. One of the project types we identify have this problem is household devices, cook stoves, water purifiers. And those of you who are project developers, when you do projects like this, you run 100,000, 1 million cook stoves. In fact, in India, there's a lot of projects out there in the market. The problem is that when you go through a whole project development, right, you have auditors, VVV, they do all the checks, double counting. They don't have access to a lot. They only have access to public data. How do they know that a certain household does not have the same cook stove? And I'm telling you, this is actually a real problem, right? We have, countries, we have auditors tell, hey, there is actually a real problem in this market. But somehow, because that incompatible registry, that lack of access to different registries, that lack of data harmonization, there's no real feasibility to know, okay, whether there are overlaps in terms of methodology like this. So this is one of the things I try to address, right? In hopes of connecting to different registries, the access to data, we can then run checks to make sure, there are no multiple cook stoves, quote unquote, in a single household. Again, that will destroy the integrity of the market. All right, just one last point is this whole Article 6. Sorry, I'll just make one last point here, is this whole thing about Article 6 tracking. Right, the whole Article 6, everybody talks about letter of authorization, or that means Article 6. What we're trying to do here is to really track down to the level which stage of the project are in the whole Article 6, right? From letter authorization, as you know, there's many, many more steps, right? Some of the countries say they want to do this thing called a positive examinations, right, which is their own auditors, and then whether that has been filed an initial report, the Manila Transparency Report, etc. So this is what we also try to track. Right, the idea of doing this is to really, again, to uphold transparency, so that everybody is aware which stage a project are. Right? It's not just only the project developers, all the countries know themselves. So I think, to sum it up, really, there is no one perfect solution. Really, what we're looking here to work with different parties here, different solutions need to collectively work together, uphold the integrity of the market. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack. Actually, we are running behind schedule. So for the sake of time, and we have another session here, which is also very interesting session on the carbon verifiers. So I would like to thank all the speakers here for such a wonderful, their thoughts, what they gave on what exactly they are doing. It's very difficult to sum up all of them because you are doing such a wide variety kind of roles and solutions we have. So thank you everyone again for this wonderful session. And these speakers will be here for whole day and tomorrow as well, so you can ask questions in the tea break as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for such an insightful session despite the time constraints. I would just like to invite Ms. Yashika Malik from the World Bank to felicitate our speakers and our panelists. First, we have Ms. Gemma Torres. A round of applause, please. Next, we have Mr. Ashish Chaturvedi from UNDP. We then have Mr. Langa Dorji. We have Mr. Yuvraj Dinesh Babu. And finally, we have Mr. Jack Chong. And of course, we have our chair and moderator, Mr. Saurabh Didi. I would request our felicitator and our chair and the panelists to come together to the front of the stage for a group photo. Thank you so much to all our panelists for this session.